Hey guys, I'm Amy Wadsworth with 804 Sycamore, and I'm really excited about this project because we have a built-in fan for above our stove, a vent hood, and this is what is above it. So it's a mess, there's just some cookbooks, and then the cabinets above these, it's just for looks. It's just a facade. And so for a while now I've been trying to figure out how do I design something, carefully attach it to our cabinets, but not ruin them in case I change my mind, or I don't know. And we still need access to this, so we have to be able to open it. So with one of the last projects I did, it gave me an idea for this spot, and I'm super excited to show you. And I think it adds some warmth and texture and interest, and it still is functional, and it looks so much better to me, and I'm very excited to show you because it's a great DIY if you have the same situation as me. So please give me a thumbs up, subscribe if you like DIY and decorating, and let's get going. Alright guys, the first step was to measure the area that I wanted to cover, and I wanted our hood to be level with this bottom cabinet. As you can see, we have a vent in there. The top cabinet is just a facade. There's literally no space to store anything, but I wanted it to fit exactly the size of the cabinets so there'd be no issues with the surrounding cabinets opening and closing. Now I decided to use 1x5 pine boards for my box. The box is literally the easiest step in all of this, and it comes together pretty quickly. I chose a 5-inch wide board because I didn't want it to come out too far, but I wanted it to come out enough to have some distinction and depth and actually look like an intentional range hood cover. And so I'm measuring twice, marking, drawing my lines, and cutting all the 1x5s for my box. I like to use the clamp method when I need two pieces the exact same size. I just use my fingers to feel the edge there and then line up the blade and just scratch it when I'm coming down to cut the second board. There are other methods, but this is what I like. And for this project, make sure you're using a finishing blade. It will make your cuts nice and clean. Now I like to set up my box and mark my pocket holes. Now you can use a $20 pocket hole jig by Craig, or you can use what I have. It's very ergonomic. It helps my shoulder. I have a little bit of shoulder issue, and this is just so easy. You just press it down and there you go. And it is set. It can be set for different thicknesses of wood. And so I went ahead and did all my pocket holes at once, and then it's ready to be assembled. I like this Craig clamp. One side goes in the pocket hole and the other side is flat. You just kind of have to build it up though so that the clamp has something to go into. I like drilling down. I like gravity to help me in this situation, but you want to make sure to add a little bit of wood glue before, like right here. Not too much, because if it oozes out, you're going to want to make sure to wipe that up. I'm staining my hood cover, and any wood glue on there is going to mess with the stain. So make sure you wipe that up immediately. And then make sure you use Craig screws for the thickness of wood that you're using. I like to use a stabilizing board, as you could see there, to kind of make sure my pieces line up. But once everything is put together, clean up any squished out glue, and then make sure you let it completely dry before messing with it anymore. Now in this situation, once the box was done, I set it aside, and the next step is the hood cover. For my cover, I used 1/2-inch thick sandy plywood, and I love this circular saw guide by Craig. It just makes it so much easier, and I like to use just a piece of insulation foam to absorb the cut. It's just so much easier than setting up sawhorses, and I don't like our table saw. We're going to sell it, so this method is perfect. Now, as you can see, I made 3 cuts because I wanted to make sure my edges were nice and fresh, and one edge was kind of chewed up, and so that's why I did 3. And this front piece is it perfectly covers my box, so it all lines up. Now your next step will be to cut all your decorative trim pieces for the front. Like I said, I used 1/2 inch thick plywood because 3/4 inch would be quite heavy and unnecessary, and any thinner, like 1/4 of an inch, is just too thick and too thin and flimsy. So I went with 1/2 inch. I also made sure that it was nice plywood because, again, I will be staining this, not painting, and I want to make sure the grain looked nice and it would be a decent piece stained. So as you're cutting your pieces, I would encourage you to dry fit them. That just means line them up where they're going to go. You can kind of start seeing, and it will help you to put it together. Now for my header rail, I used a 1x3. The bottom is 1x5. The shelf there, I ended up taking about 1 inch off of, but I wanted it to line up nicely with my corbels. And then all the vertical pieces are just 1x2 pieces of pine. Now when you're dry fitting it, this will show you if you made a bad cut. You need to redo it, because if it doesn't fit when it's dry, it's definitely not going to fit when you're assembling it, and you want it to be just right. Now I will link where I got these awesome corbels. They were $5 each, and they are the perfect size for this project. I absolutely love them. I found similar ones, but they're much more expensive, so I will put a link to that in the description below, as well as a link to my blog post with more photos and some other resources for you. A nice way to finish off your plywood edges is with some edge banding, and I just used an iron, went back and forth, made sure that it was adhered nicely to it. And then you want to go ahead and wait till it cools just a little bit, but I trimmed it when it was still warm, and that worked out for me. Just be careful, it kind of pokes out of the trimmer and can stab you a little bit, so be careful. Now that all your pieces are done, it's time to assemble the cover. Now, I took some time to think about which order would be best to assemble my design in, and I decided to start with the corbels. I found the middle, marked all my spots, found the middle of the corbels, and then added some wood glue and let it dry before doing anything else. Now I use painter's tape because in my experience, wood glue can kind of glide a little bit, and I did not want these pieces moving once I marked their perfect spots. And then the next day, when it's been dried overnight, I'm marking where they're going to go on the shelf. And I decided to pocket hole my shelf in. I wanted it extra strong. I knew I'd be placing a few decorative items on there, and I just want to be sure. So I made pocket holes where they would be hidden behind the corbels. I wanted to drill the shelf before adding the bottom piece, and so I used my bottom piece as a guide. You can see I used clamps for the bottom piece exactly where it would go, and then I clamped the shelf, and that allowed me to drill my screws and keep it all perfectly lined up. Now once my shelf is up, I just left it clamped in just to add more stability, and then now that the glue is dry, I brad nailed behind my corbels to give extra stability. Then some wood glue, and I clamped it down and left it overnight. I will go ahead and add brad nails behind it later on, which I don't show in this video, but I added a few just to be safe. So the main process here is wood glue and then brad nail a few spots. Now I'm staining this, and so I'm going to use some really good wood filler, and I will link that because it turned out it stained beautifully. Again, I just gave a little bit of thought for order of operation, what would be best to do, and I decided to do the side pieces first, then that top rail, the 1x3, before I did the middle. I left the middle for the end, just to make sure that I could get it perfectly square, 90 degrees up and down. After my project was totally cleaned up, wiped off, no dust, ready to go, I added an even layer of stain conditioner, and I've had nothing but excellent success using stain conditioner. It really helps my stain to go on evenly and creates a beautiful product. I also like to use the staining sponge. It's just easier for me to manipulate over a brush. It's what I'm used to, it's what I like, and so I just do one layer of this color. I will link it in the description if you like the outcome that I have. Once the stain is totally dry and good to go, I added a Varathane whitewash layer, and this is the key to getting that worn vintage look. And I actually brushed this on because I was able to get a more even layer, and I did not wipe any of it off. After your stain is completely dry, I like to do a quick sanding, like 220 grit, and then wipe it all down, and then I use my polyurethane to seal it up now, because it'll be cooking on the stovetop and I want to be able to wipe this clean and not have grease ruin my job. I did 3 coats of the polyurethane. Okay, now this is a bit fast forwarded. You will notice these boards all of a sudden inside my box. Now those are just common boards, and I didn't take the time to record this because these inside pieces fit my cabinets perfectly. You can see it's notched out right there. That is to give room for my cabinets. And all I did was pre-drill and screw these screws into the box. And then what I'm doing right now is I'm pre-drilling holes so that I can install it into the cabinet. And I marked it perfectly because I wanted to drill into the face front of my existing cabinet, exactly where the old hinges used to be. I'm pre-drilling all the way through and trying to keep it as straight as possible. It is exactly in the middle of the face front board, so I did a bunch of measuring. Now you can see here's the box in place. You can see the little notches, how they are exactly for my cabinetry. And even though I already drilled pilot holes, this is going to allow me to pre-drill into my cabinet, which I also measured and marked because I didn't want to drill into one of the old hinge holes. Now I'm using 2-inch screws, and I had to stick my foot up there to get a little bit of leverage. You should adjust the torque on your drill gun, which I did, but I did not want to strip out these screws, and so I did what I had to do. I probably used more screws than necessary, but I don't want this baby falling down. Now for the top, I also did not record pre-drilling the holes for the hinge. Now we just used a very heavy duty hinge inside, and what we're doing now is we guide the bolts up through the holes, and then my husband Jeremy is attaching the nuts. Now this way we can easily remove this front if we ever have to access the vent. I would have loved to have made a hinge that could open and close, but it was hundreds of dollars because of the size and weight of this front cover, and that just was not worth it to me. This method worked out for us, and I wish I would have recorded the process, but it's just a hinge. I clamped the lid to the box and marked the hinge spots, pre-drilled, and screwed it in. And I'm going to show you a close-up of the top where you can see. Now I ended up drilling 4 holes, but that was a bit overkill, and it was very difficult to guide these in. So as you can see, the bolts just come up and we attach the nuts with some washers, and that is it. It is very heavy duty. It's very strong. It's secure, and it turned out great. I absolutely love the warmth that it gives to this kitchen. I have some other projects that I'm going to do in this kitchen, so be sure to subscribe so that you can watch this space take on its final look. I have probably 3 more projects, including a pantry. So I absolutely love it. We are very happy with it. It adds character and charm to our modern kitchen. So if you love the European kitchen look, this might be a project for you. Now, I had those cutting boards right behind my stove, but that was too much wood, so I made a quick gallery wall. All right, that's it for this project. Thanks so much for watching, and be sure to subscribe if you like DIY and decorating.